Kawaii is the quintessential style of modern Japan, and once globally recognizable and clearly Japanese. Cuteness is everywhere in Japan, from children's goods to post office boxes, from airplanes to the mascots of Japanese cities, and even decorations on fighter planes. And cuteness is an essential Japanese export. Commodified cuteness is a multi-billion-dollar industry and has become a political project, a way for Japan to project soft power around the world. In this lecture, I want to do 5 things. First, I want to briefly define kawaii and its evolution as a cultural aesthetic. Second, I want to offer a short account of the story of Hello Kitty, the most globally successful example of kawaii. I then want to talk about the commodification of kawaii and discuss some of the ways that people interpolate kawaii into their lifestyles. And then finally, I want to talk about how people craft identities using kawaii as an example. That's a lot to cover, so I had better get started. Cultural critics like Soichi Masabuchi have argued for almost 3 decades that kawaii is replacing traditional Japanese aesthetics of beautiful and refined with something very new and different. Classical Japanese aesthetics is said to be based in the 3 principles of wabi, sabi, and yugen, which are rooted in both Shinto and Zen principles. Wabi refers to the recognition of beauty in the transience and starkness of nature. Sabi refers to the recognition of the beauty of natural colors and natural forms. And yugen refers to the achievement of profound grace and subtlety through the harmonization of human work with nature. Kawaii is a combination of 2 kanji, the logographs of the Japanese writing system, usually glossed as love and acceptable. What I think is important to note here is that where classical Japanese aesthetics drew on nature, the aesthetic of kawaii is social. It's tied to relationships and to the evocation of positive feeling. The origin of kawaii is closely related to another concept, shoujo. Originally, this term referred to a premarital female, typically 10 to 14 years old. In Japan, the shoujo was a kind of liminal figure, betwixt and between the categories of child and adult. Misty in Pokemon is a shoujo, and that's not surprising. Shoujo figures are all over the worlds of anime and manga. Like liminal figures everywhere, shoujo have been considered to be dangerous. Jennifer Robertson suggests that they are potentially disruptive girls and women between puberty and marriage. Sharon Kinsella argues that kawaii and shoujo became consociated when Japanese teenagers, mostly females, began using an informal, cute style of writing in the 1970s. This new style was more westernized than traditional Japanese. It used a left-to-right format, as well as many English terms, and was decorated with little pictures of hearts and happy faces and multiple exclamation points. Many styles of cute writing and speaking developed, and they were the subject of considerable public debate about what it meant for Japanese society that girls were changing the writing system in this way. At the same time, however, the image of the shoujo was changing. Shoujo were starting to be seen as the ideal domestic consumers and trendsetters. By the 1990s, according to Kinsella, kawaii had come to mean essentially childlike. It celebrates sweet, adorable, innocent, pure, simple, genuine, gentle, vulnerable, weak, and inexperienced social behavior and physical appearance. But this does not mean kawaii cannot be sexualized. Those liminal tensions remain important even as the meanings of the concept change. And the meanings of shoujo did continue to change. After the 1990s, according to Jennifer Robertson, shoujo can be extended to represent nothing short of Japanese people in general, in their patterns of vast, feminized, middle-class consumption. Shoujo technically still applies to pre-adolescent girls, but it can metaphorically apply to anyone. And kawaii styles become crucial elements through which young women make themselves shoujo. The meanings of kawaii, too, shift over time. From cuteness, specifically, it came to refer to things that are cool, or groovy, or neat. It expands to be used to refer to anything desirable, and specifically those things that are non-threatening. The evolution of kawaii is embodied in the most famous kawaii character in the world, Hello Kitty. Hello Kitty is a trademarked character owned by the Sanrio company. Sanrio was founded in 1960 by Shintaro Tsuji as the Yamanashi Silk Company. In 1962, Tsuji expanded his enterprise from silk to making rubber sandals with little flowers painted on them. And he discovered that sales surged when he had artists paint cute characters on the sandals. And so he hired a number of artists to develop lines of cute creatures for his expanding product line. Hello Kitty joined the Sanrio family in 1979, created by the designer Yuko Shimizu. From 1974 to 1978, Hello Kitty saw 700% sales growth, becoming one of the most recognizable icons in the world. 1987 saw the first of what eventually became 5 different animated television programs. In 1990, many Sanrio stores were retrofitted to appeal to older, hipper audiences. In 1992, Sanrio introduced the first of what became 17 video games so far. In 2002, Hello Kitty dropped for the first time from first place in Japan's most recognizable characters list, replaced, of course, by Pikachu, who is also pretty kawaii. From October 2014 until May 2015, the Japanese-American National Museum presented Hello, Exploring the Super Cute World of Hello Kitty. This was the first large-scale Hello Kitty museum retrospective in the U.S. It was organized as part of the Hello Kitty 40th anniversary celebrations, included an extensive product survey, rare and unique items from the Sanrio archives. It was curated by anthropologist Christine Yano, the author of Pink Globalization, and this expo had tens of thousands of people visited the exhibit, and it showed how enormously globally successful Hello Kitty had become. One of the most significant aspects of Kawaii is that it is inextricably linked to consumer goods. There are Kawaii sections in every Japanese department store, and no Japanese cultural expo is complete without its Kawaii section. Brian McVeigh argues that the success of Kawaii is due precisely to the fact that Kawaii has become a polyvalent symbol, into which many meanings can be read. It has the power to be simultaneously cute, cool, and camp. As a cute product, it signifies innocence, sweetness, and naivete, and is completely appropriate for children. But Hello Kitty is also cool, and as such, it can be successfully marketed to teenage girls. And because Hello Kitty has been around for over 40 years, it has a nostalgic value that allows it to be marketed as campy fun to adult women. McVeigh's analysis highlights what is perhaps the most significant aspect of Kawaii, how people integrate it into their lives. One can do so many things with Kawaii. One can inhabit it. Kawaii characters exist in real space, as fence posts, as physical logos for companies. One also wears Kawaii, and women have developed many styles of Kawaii wear. One can also physically incorporate cuteness. A tattoo turns one's body into a work of Kawaii, or one can seek to change the body itself in conformity with Kawaii. A study by Kanebo, a Japanese cosmetic company, found that Japanese women in their 20s and 30s favored the cute look with a childish round face. Japanese women may attempt to alter the size of their eyes with large contacts, use false eyelashes, or even have a blepharoplasty, a surgical operation to make their eyes more rounded. One can also play with Kawaii, enacting a Kawaii incarnation of Marvel Comics' Punisher or a Kawaii Darth Vader from Star Wars. One can also invert Kawaii for humorous effect, as in the case of the Happy Bunny character created by Jim Benton, which combines the Kawaii elements with antisocial messages. But one can also invert Kawaii for more disturbing purposes, as in the genre of Kawaii gore, in which Kawaii elements are overlain with themes of mutilation and dismemberment. Why do people integrate Kawaii into their lives in all these ways? One reason is that Kawaii becomes part of the process of identity formation. Identity, in the sense that I mean it, is a social process using symbols to create connections between oneself and some group or category of person. The elements of Kawaii are signs that imply things about the identities of the persons who display them. There are two aspects to identity, internal and external. Internal identity involves the individual as a locus of experience. The self is that aspect of the individual that internalizes their experience of the world and have to find ways to articulate it and make sense of it. This includes your own sense of who you are as a unique being, in terms of your similarities and differences to others. External identity refers to the individual as a social actor. The person is the aspect of the individual that articulates and performs identities to others out in the social world. A central point is that identities don't simply exist. They have to be constructed through some sort of cultural articulation. Humans construct identities through both language and nonverbal actions. By language, I mean all verbal modes of expression, both the way you talk, your accents, your registers, turn-taking, code-switching, rules for politeness, and the content of your talk, the stories you tell, the way you do greetings, proverbs and aphorisms and metaphors. By meaningful action, I mean behaviors that signify to you and to others according to some set of cultural codes. This includes displays, how you dress, how you wear makeup, whether you wear makeup, the kinds of decorations you use, the kinds of furnishings in your house, the gestures you make, and the activities you engage in, what you buy, what you eat, what you play with. Now, actions, both verbal actions and other kinds of actions, come in two kinds. They can be strategic or they can be unreflective. Strategic actions are goal-oriented actions that we consciously plan and carry out. Unreflective actions, by contrast, are those that we perform by habit, without planning or conscious effort. If we put this all together, we see that we engage in both strategized and unstrategized speech, as well as intentional and unreflective actions, which we interpret and reflect on internally, and from which we draw a sense of identity. Insofar as they're social, performed in the presence of other people, those same strategized and unstrategized uses of language, as well as our intentional and non-reflective actions, are interpreted by others, who construct from these signs a sense of who we are, a sense of our identity. Objects and artifacts play an enormous part of the actions that we use in order to construct our identity. An important point to take away here is that in spite of its internal dimension, identity construction is always social. Now, this is true in three ways. First, the societies and cultural systems in which we were raised, as well as those in which we live as adults, produce the cultural codes through which we articulate our identities. Okay, we're only able to show who we are to ourselves and others and interpret our actions and our speech according to sets of cultural codes that we learned growing up in a society. Second, we occupy positions in social fields. We have positions in those fields, boss, family, policeman, and how we act and how we interpret each other's actions are always constrained by our positions in those fields relative to one another. How I interpret the actions of my boss, speaking in a certain way, acting in a certain way, may be quite different from the way that I interpret the actions of my daughters, speaking and acting in particular kinds of ways. Social positions are part of the process through which we interact, what kind of stages we're performing on, and how we get framed in people's interpretations of our actions. Third, we articulate our identities in relationship to others. People mirror back to us in a feedback loop that affects how we see ourselves. And what I mean by this is that people treat us in particular ways based on how they identify us. In doing so, people make us aware of how they see us. And this can lead to identity conflict if the way they treat us shows that they have a different sense of who we are than our own internal sense of who we are. And this can create a certain kind of conflict. Let me give you an example. In the ideal situation, identity yields a subjective sense of meaningfulness and actuality by transforming childhood emotional tensions into adult pursuits valued by a community. Sometimes, though, even often, individuals experience important disjunctions between their identities, especially their socially constructed identities, and their inner experience or their social reputation. In Kawaii culture, buriko has emerged as a term for Japanese women who are believed by those around them to fake kawaii behaviors. These behaviors include using a high-pitched voice, emitting squealing giggles, demonstrating girlish tastes and a dependent manner, in ways that are viewed by the people around the person as forced, or fake, or inauthentic. Buriko is a term to mock inauthentic identities. So it should come as no surprise to learn that the term was invented in the 1980s by a television comedian named Kuniko Yamada, who enacts a buriko person for laughs. Buriko is ultimately about a contradiction between the person someone is trying to be and the person one is taken for by others. Or, more precisely, when one tries to enact a particular identity, but those around one aren't persuaded that your meaningful actions and speech accurately reflect the real you. Kawaii travels because it is portable, transferable, easy to imitate and integrate, and endlessly commodifiable. Millions of persons around the world embrace aspects of Kawaii as part of the cultural repertoire through which they construct their identity. To wear Hello Kitty is to present yourself as a particular kind of person. Maybe cute, maybe cool, maybe campy, or maybe just as part of a cosmopolitan community of Japanese pop culture fans.